This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, now we're recording. Oops. Okay, well,
Okay.
it'll be okay. We'll recover.
Okay.
Okay, that's all I had.
Okay. All right, budget review. Mary, do you want to start?
I'll start and then I'll give it back to you guys. I wanted to answer a couple of questions that I had from a flurry of emails this weekend. So I put together in your packet, it's that first page that said what's in the budget at the top. Actually, it's just a, ignore the title, but go with the information. I wanted the board to be clear that our capital expenditures are being totally funded, I'm going to say totally funded, by CHIPS. Village Grove, the roadwork project that you had planned out, I think it's going to be for 35,000, but in any case, I had 30,000 in here and 30,000 covered by CHIPS. We also had the purchase of two pieces of equipment, the T450 and the Kubota, which were going to cost us 58,000 approximately, with a trade-in for the Bobcat 2013 Bobcat of 16.5, using the balance of the CHIPS of 38,000. So at this point in moment in time, we are looking at 3,500 that's coming out of the general fund budget. However, that number will change because we are still waiting for an allocation amount for the 2021 budget year. It has not been revealed at this point. Usually it is in the budget online for everybody to view, but it is not. As of 3:30 this afternoon, it was not up there. I talked to our CHIPS representative yesterday. She is going to let me know as soon as we hear something. She is very positive that CHIPS and EWR monies will continue for the upcoming year. However, PAVE New York it was a 5-year program that ended on 3/31/20. So that money for us was a total of 9,800. She is not positive if that 9,800 will be left in the bank for us to use, or if we have lost it. So in either case, she still said she was positive that we would have regular CHIPS allocations, which for us is about $21,000 a year. So whatever difference we come in less of the monies that we have right now budgeted, that would be covered by the new allocation, but the letters supposedly have been sent out. We just haven't seen them yet. So what I'm trying to get at is the 3,500 right now that we're looking to pick up through general fund monies. That will also go away as soon as I find out what the total figure is from the CHIPS allocations. So whatever, the Village Grove and the equipment, both covered by CHIPS, basically not being impacted by the general operating budget.
Thanks, Mary. Mary,
okay.
Before you go any further on that, that's very helpful to know, and that's not going to impact people's taxes at all. What about other maintenance fees? So I think about the Village Hall maintenance fees, and while it's not a capital project per se, it's not a human project. It has cost associated with it. Those are the kinds of things that maybe we want to push a year.
That would be up to the board to decide.
Let me address that, Dan.
Okay.
We had a list of projects for Village Hall, all of which we have cut out of the budget. The only one that we really have to go forward with is to repair the front door. The front door is delaminating. If it goes for another winter, we really have a risk of losing the whole door. So I made a call today. I think we have money in this year's budget for it. So I'm guessing it's going to cost about $1,000 to do that. But it makes more sense to get it done than risk losing the entire door, because to replace that door, you're talking probably close to $10,000.
Yeah, it makes sense. Is there anything else that could be considered maintenance that is not in CHIPS and is in the current budget?
For CHIPS monies, this is Treasurer Mary Morowski. For CHIPS money, it has to have a 10-year life for road work or equipment. It has to. That is the criteria from them. And so that would not be also applicable for any building repairs. That is considered our own expense and should be funded out of the general fund. The other is monies that come out of the state budget for us. The monies that I have set aside in the line item are for any emergencies that might take place. Like, for instance, we had a sewer issue here at the Village Hall a few weeks back. I mean, it's those sort of little things. There's a loose step out front, those little things that are going to cost some money to have on hand. It's better to have something than nothing. Just like your own personal home budget, you'd rather have something set aside for what you might have needs for over the year rather than nothing at all and be surprised with a big bill. So that was my basic thinking on that.
Okay, and what line item is that?
That's 1620.4. So we have $6,000 set aside in there for any kind of emergencies that may take place. I mean, a few years ago, we had this room was leaking, the roof was leaking into this room. So that was a $17,000 repair that we had to come up with. So it's better to have something versus nothing.
So Mary, the last full year that we have in here that we can report was 3,500 in 18-19, and we've got it at 6,000 now. And so far this year we've spent 2,000. Can we just cut a few thousand out of that, make it say 3?
This is Village Clerk. Can I jump in real quick? I'd like to remind everyone that we also had an additional repair. We were lucky, insurance jumped in and covered some of it. So this number is probably lower because we had insurance cover. I think it was almost 3,500, wasn't it, Mary, for the repair?
Yes, that sounds correct.
So I just point out that, yes, this number looks low, but it might be just because we were lucky enough to have insurance help cover.
Okay, and that's fine, but the last full year that we had was $3,500, and this year so far is $2,000. So part of the way through the year, and we're budgeting for 6. I'm proposing to the trustees, not to the staff, to the trustees, that we knock that down from 6 to 3 or 4, whatever you guys think. Just shave something off it.
And this is this won't include the door, correct? Mayor Corby, this is Trustee Stetzer.
I believe in talking to Mary this afternoon that we have money in our present 2019-2020 budget for the door. Is that right, Mary?
That is correct, providing that the work would be estimated, approved, and done by May 31st. If it does not happen,
Which is unlikely because of the crisis situation. So in all likelihood, the work would have to happen in the coming year. The other thing I would say, based on, as the architect on the board, based on the variety of things that could go wrong, like a furnace breaking or some of the plumbing problems that we've experienced in the past, problems with the separate system heating the Legion room, as a contingency, $6,000 is a reasonable level to cover most types of repairs, such as a leaking roof or other things that could go wrong in the coming year. I think it's wise to leave the money in that category because we can always transfer it later on. But I think the $2,000 or $3,000 that was there in whatever year that was, that's too little. And based on the experience we've had with this building over 30 years, it's a 150-year-old building. There are things that go wrong, and I think we should have enough money to cover them. The difference between now and several years ago is we really don't have a fund balance to dip into. And so there's nowhere, and that's the problem that we're finding throughout the budget, is that if we underestimate our costs, we really can't responsibly go into our fund balance at this point.
Okay, we've talked about this too long. Just trying to save a couple grand. Don't worry about it. Let's move on.
Well, let's move on. Can we just go back to what I started with? Because this has to do with other people that have questioned me on this information. So to go back, the funding for CHIPS is a no impact basically on our budget.
Right.
It doesn't affect the operating budget. The next item, the bond and the interest for the bond is being covered by the bond monies that we've had. So that also is a no impact item on our budget. What is funded by the taxpayer dollars is the RAV sweeper and interest, the Ford 450 and interest, and the FOPV settlement that you have already discussed this evening. That is money that is coming out of the regular general fund operating budget. So those monies, plus the 3,500 rate that I'm counting at the moment until I find out monies from CHIPS, is a total of 75,455 above and beyond regular operating expenses. So I just wanted to be clear with that and hope any questions on that one?
Nope.
Everybody's good?
Mhm.
All right. After many revisions to the budget since last Thursday, I
Hey,
have
Mary,
now,
can I interrupt you for a second? The sheet I have, is this current, or did you do a new sheet after I left the office this afternoon?
are you referring to
I'm
trial-
referring to the Village of Pittsford General Fund budget sheets that
That
we
says-
filed this afternoon.
that says need to cover? Does it say need to cover on that sheet?
No.
You
The
sure?
date on it is 4/21 is the latest one that she sent.
I had about 5 of those today. Does it say need to cover on it?
The one I looked at earlier, I believe.
Don't look at that one. Look at the one I just gave you, which had the attorney bills clipped to it.
Yeah, it's 15:36 is the time
Okay,
on
hold
there.
on.
3:36 today.
You got it?
Nope.
All right, hold on. Let's take just a 2-minute break here so I can make sure Mayor Corby is where we are.
Now I do. Here it is. Here it is. I have it. I've got it.
All right.
Got it now. Okay, great.
You've got one now that says need to cover, correct?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. So after I went through all the revisions that everybody suggested, I am on a shortfall for fund balance. The number should be 0. And we are now dipping into a fund balance that we don't necessarily have of 65,133. So with that, I would like to just go through the line items with the board, and then we can have whatever discussion there is. I just would like to close up any gaps that there might be because we're running out of time. So going to page 1 of the general fund budget for the appropriations, the village board and the mayor's salaries, I left it same as last year, as suggested last Thursday. I adjusted the conferences for the village board. I left mayor's conference because he's part of the executive committee. The salary monies I have left the same. Equipment for the village hall is 1 computer in case one of ours crashes, and a pad for Joan at the shop so she can use it to work with while she's under the vehicles. I took out the newsletters because we haven't had anything really in 2 years. The other stuff's remained the same. Software support, I have it 8,500. I think we had a couple of different numbers floating around in there. Adjusted the CPA a little bit by about $500. Let me just see. Law category. This is a big one. I think the board needs to discuss.
Before you get to law, payroll services looks quite a bit higher.
We ended last year at 5,800. We still have April and May to put it on the books for this year. we're at 4479. So with a possible raise in cost from vendor, I put it up at 62. We're going against a budget this year of 5,800.
Okay.
All right. Other questions regarding that section?
Did we talked about taking, this is trustee Stetzer, taking the line items out for conferences. It says village board. I know it's only $500, but, and then the mayor's conferences are 1,200, and you just mentioned that you left that in because he's on the executive team. Are those required?
We have a seat on the executive board that represents the 538 villages
Okay.
in Monroe County. If
Okay.
I don't go to those meetings, we'll
We
lose
lose our
our
seat.
seat on that board.
Okay, and the $500 for the village board, I mean, ordinarily we can attend different webinars and whatnot. What's the harm if we take that out? That's
There may-
8.10.10.4.
Right. There might be a conference in the spring, for instance, that you may want to go to, like public officials or something like that, that might be hosted. And you
I
might,
think there's an election next year. The reason I advocate for leaving it in is I don't know who's running or who's going to run, but if there are new trustees that are on the board, we would certainly want to give them an opportunity for training. And
Yeah.
the training would be offered in May of next year, which would be in this year's budget.
Okay.
What about 1410.44? Is that the conferences line that you're talking about? I thought you were talking about the prior one, the 1200. It's just that 4K seems very high on 1410.
let me answer just in part. Conference for 1010.4 is for 4 trustees. 1210.4 is for the mayor. 1410.44 is for conferences for the village clerk and the treasurer to attend NICOM conferences. If that answers that portion of the question. And beyond
Yeah,
that,
so-
Bob, you can speak to that.
Do we need those? That's $4,000. My general thought on these is that we do them if we absolutely need to, and particularly if it's safety related. You know, I could see the DPW people needing to keep up on that, but general conferences to get better at our jobs, I'm not sure $4,000 is
Well,
well
it
spent.
does address, filings that we do, ways of handling particular issues, a lot of financial stuff that comes in. Dorothea could probably speak to a little bit of this. It's all the upcoming laws that we have. Those are things that are
The only generally every year, New York State changes protocol and procedures that are required for administrative practices that we must comply with. The only way that we have of finding out what those are is when the staff gets training. In the same way that Steve needs to go to training to maintain his certification, the clerk also needs that, not only to maintain her certification, but to make sure that we're abreast of whatever changes are happening to New York State requirements for administrative practices in a municipality. And probably this year, because of what's going on, it's possible that some of this may become online. We don't know at this point. It's obviously 4 months off. But I think we need to leave something in there because we create a vulnerability if we don't allow the staff to have strength.
Okay. That's fine. I propose we cut it in half.
Not done yet. The other thing I think we need to consider is that in hiring potentially a new treasurer who will be trained, we certainly want to provide training for that person to ensure that they come up to speed.
Okay, I propose we cut it in half, just save a couple $1,000.
I like that idea as well. I think this year they are going to probably, I mean, we're not going to be the only village that's in a a financial hardship situation. I think they're hopefully going to offer those things in webinar form, at least for this next budget year. So I agree. I don't think we should wipe it out entirely, just in case that's not the case. But
I agree, and that's what we talked about earlier this afternoon, is maybe cutting it in half, Renee.
Okay.
sounds
Okay,
good.
So Mary,
everybody's all right with that? Okay,
It would
let's move on.
probably, this is Mary, that would probably reflect only one person able to go to conference if that turned out to be the case. Just saying. So
yep,
if everybody's good with that, you want me to bring that number down to 2,000?
Let's do that
Yes.
for now, Mary.
Let's do that for now?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I think
Okay.
you have a
Yes.
pretty strong argument if they want to require that everyone's going to have to attend these and spend thousands of dollars, then they're going to, in a year, an austerity year like this, they're going to need to provide some online options. So I'm willing to go to bat if we need to start pressing for that, but
Okay. Are we okay to
The
move
other
on?
thing I'll offer, what we haven't done, but what we can do is I'll call Nikon tomorrow and try to just confirm what they're planning to do. I don't know if they know, but any information we have would help inform what the right number is for that category.
yes, great. Thank you, Mayor Corby.
thanks.
Okay, are we good to move on?
Yep.
All right. The
Nothing we
category,
can do on 141048, the dues and contracts. It's at 13K, it's a big number. I mean, it
it is a
looks
bit-
like it's in line with what we've spent in prior years, but is there any place we can cut back on dues?
I don't, not really. Yeah, I'm saying not really. I would have to totally take a look at exactly what it is, but it's programs that, we're supported programs. It's our memberships. It's, there's a variety of things in there.
The Irondequoit Watershed Collaborative, the NICOM, which is essential, the Monroe County Association of Villages, which is really minimal. I think it's $200 a year is what we pay in dues. So there isn't a lot in there.
But I could
big
look at,
one is NICOM, and NICOM you certainly don't want to opt out of.
okay, are we good to move on?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. With the law category, we have kind of been all over the place this past weekend and yesterday and today. I think it would be best if I turn this part of the conversation over to both Mayor Corby and Frank.
And I want to just share information, Frank, and then I'll let you go ahead. I did had some questions about Mindy Zoglin's projected costs, so I spoke to her this afternoon. In her projected work, she had one number which is called Other PCP Matters for $18,750. I called her to ask what that involved, and there's two things in there. One is there's an annual extension of the site plan approval that has been annually extended to allow the litigation to proceed in avoiding another lawsuit from Mark IV. The second has to do with a tolling agreement regarding a 2016 letter sent by Mark IV to the planning board that requests they determine that PCP has adequately remediated the broken flow of the storm pipe that runs through the property. Obviously, they haven't done that. This is something that has to be renewed annually. It seems like a lot of money to me, but then I'm not an attorney, but that's what those two things are for.
Yeah.
The other issue is the $50,000 for the LWRP case. I spoke to Chuck Malcolm after the court conference on Friday. He called me, and he suggested that probably the appeal to the LWRP lawsuit wouldn't happen in this upcoming fiscal year. When I spoke to Mindy today, I asked her the same question. She felt strongly that probably they would get a decision from ARC and an appeal would happen in the beginning part of 2021. So she felt the money should be in there. I also spoke to Dan Spitzer this afternoon. He agreed with Mindy. He wasn't sure what Chuck was thinking, but he's going to talk to Chuck and get back to me. However, he felt that the $50,000 amount that she had in there for filing an appeal was kind of high because there isn't that much record and the documentation for the case has already been prepared and submitted to the Court of Justice ARC. So he suggested that a more reasonable amount for that appeal would be $25,000 to $30,000. So that's what I learned this afternoon.
Mayor Corby, this is Trustee Lampier. Are you then making a proposal to the trustees that we reduce that line item to 30,000 or 25,000?
Well, I was thinking
Is that an
30,000.
actual proposal?
That's what I spoke to Mary
Okay.
about this afternoon. That was my recommendation.
But we don't know how,
Okay.
whoops, sorry, this is Trustee Stetzer. We haven't run that by Mindy, by the Zoglin group, correct?
No, but Renee, what I think would happen if the appeal was initiated in the beginning of 2021, it normally takes 4 to 6 months to get on the calendar of the appellate court. So the presentation and some of the costs would probably flip over into the following fiscal year. That's why I felt maybe it would be okay to take that number down to 30,000.
Okay, thank you.
So Mary,
No.
in the version of the budget that I have here, it's already at 30. Did you already make
just saw
that,
that.
or am I looking at the wrong
Mary
line?
made the
You're
change.
looking at the wrong line.
My recommendation this afternoon.
Wait, so those were conflicting.
Oh,
So
ma-
Mary, 142405 already looks like it's at 30.
It's at 30, yes.
Yeah, so you
We
already
had-
made that adjustment.
It's been one of these things. It was at 30, we took out the money. It was at 50, we took out the money. And now we're coming back to having something in there in case it does come to fruition in this fiscal year. So we are at 30 at the moment.
Okay, go ahead, Frank.
Excuse me, this is Trustee Galusha. Mary, yesterday, line item 1420.41, Hodgson litigation, that was at 40,000. Now that's up to 80,000. What was the
That is-
increase? Or why was it increased?
This is pending discussions that Bob and I have had. Bob, do you want to address that?
Yeah, we asked, Mary and I spoke together with Dan Spitzer this afternoon. One item was that we wanted to get a tally on our entire liability to Hodgson Russ. And to prevent that liability from appearing as a short-term, what's the word I'm looking for, Mary?
Short-term liability
A
expense?
short-term liability. We need an agreement from Hodgson Russ executed by the end of this fiscal year. So we spoke to Dan about that. He's going to put that together. The other thing he said he would do, previously, Hodgson Russ had estimated about 80 to 100,000 in expenses, but the situation has changed because of the recent court developments. In speaking to Dan this afternoon, they're going to take another look and get back to us with a revised estimate of what they believe their actual costs will be. So currently, honestly, we don't know. This is a moving target, and I'm trying to get the most up to date so we can be as accurate as possible in our projections.
But they're supposed to be getting back to us within the week, so we should have a better handle on what that number should be. But what we're looking to have is enough to cover an agreement payment and enough for a little bit of business, new business if it should develop. But they will confirm that.
The primary task for Hodgson Russ in this upcoming year is resubmitting documentation to the appellate court. So it should be significantly less than the year prior.
Yeah, and we don't even know what we've spent this year on it. So
Well,
We don't have
they're supposed to
anything
be
to
bringing
go-
that.
We're getting that
I
information.
know, but we don't
Dan.
have anything to go on with these. So that's all nice to hear, but we
Well,
can't even base it on this year's actuals.
they
So,
are getting those numbers together for us, and we should have those within the week.
okay,
We
so we're
thought-
definitely going to revisit the law, the 1420s,
Yes,
at least
Yes,
once
we
more,
are.
maybe twice more.
that's right.
That is correct. We're just trying to tighten up numbers and trying to clear up some of these categories. So are we good to move on for right now? Or do we have further questions? All right.
Let's move on.
Yep, moving on. On page 3, I did not make any other changes, I don't believe. So that one's, any questions on page 3? No?
Okay.
Moving on to page 4.
Conferences for records management officer,
That, yes.
1500,
That is for-
1460.1.
1,500 is for any digital, sending out any digital information from the office to have scanned or whatever, plus conference time. So that's what that covers.
Conference time, it's in the hundreds of dollars. It's pretty minimal expense.
Usually like around $200 or $300.
Yeah, so it's you're not picking up a lot of money there. And it is very useful for Sophie. The standards, because of the changing digitizing technology, it's pretty important to stay abreast of what New York State requires for filing records digitally.
And she is new into that portion of the position, so it would be kind of vital for her to know that.
Okay,
Okay to move on?
Yes.
page 4.
Page 4, we have the FOPV settlement in here for $34,000. I have the contingency account sitting at $26,287, which is a little bit low, but that's what it is for right now.
What would you like
I
to
make-
see that at? What do you think's a realistic number to see that at?
Oh God, we haven't had a realistic number in there in a long time. It
The
should
comptroller's office generally recommends that you have
like
15
10,
to
15.
20% of your total expenditures.
Right,
Yes.
we know we're not going to get there. So Mary, what is the number you want to see in there?
I would like to see at least 50, 60,000 in there. That would be ideal. And this is for things that come up during the year that nobody has thought about or planned on at this time of year that happen to crop up. So
So we need another $25,000.
at least to feel a little bit more comfortable, but it's, I don't know. We could revisit that one. I made the adjustments to Ty Lin, and let me see, there's nothing else in those.
Time in a budget meeting, I gotta call you later, okay? Thanks, bye.
All right, on page 5, 5020.4, we have Village Grove. I have 36.5 in there, 35,000 of it will be covered by CHIPS. The balance of it is for like pothole repair, minimal kind of stuff for them to do. 5110.2 is the equipment, which again is covered by CHIPS. And on the offset to that is the trade-in for the 2013 Bobcat also. Made the adjustments to, go ahead.
Hold on 5110.4, the repairs and materials, that's not covered by CHIPS, right?
That is correct. That is our own out-of-pocket expense for.
Frank, is there anything we can do there? That's a big number.
That is also an average number, what we typically use.
I think
Frank,
it's,
is there anything we can do there on 5110.4?
No, I think that's a realistic number.
Okay, all right.
and I
we
think
ended the
because
year.
we have a fair amount of old equipment, I don't think that's a number that you really wanna cut.
Yeah, no, I was just asking Frank. It's fine.
Yeah, and the year prior, we ended up the year with 29,550.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's pretty close. If the vendor costs go up, that 30,000 might not even be enough. but we can cross that bridge later. Same thing with contractual for the DPW at 34,000 here. I took that back down a little bit. Diesel fuel, gasoline, don't have an idea what they might do, but they may go up. I don't know. Gasoline is dropping right now. Don't have a good clue. On salt contract, I have 9,000 in there basically on last year. We have not received an invoice from the town for our salt contract for this year. Depending on what kind of a winter we have, that number could go up to 12,000, but 9,000 is a good benchmark. Moving on to page 6. Village 5182.4 village-wide street lighting. That's all the street lighting throughout the village. I did adjust that down by 1,000. The year prior was 42.6. We're at 36 right now at the end of March, needing to get April and May in, but it's going to come fairly close to the number that we've got. Street light repairs is for bulbs or whatever else goes on. You know, we have to do a replacement of street lamp and that's even a low number, but it is, we're at 33,000 right, 3,300 right now. Last year was 2,000. So it's kind of in line. Sidewalks and curbs, that's just for replacement pieces of sidewalk. It's not even doing a stretch or anything. And that number we took down 1,000. 7110.4 is contractual for parks. That's flowers, wreaths, porta pots.
Can we pause on that for a minute? Is it,
Yep.
I know you said contractual, is it possible to cut those and ask for private donations on those kinds of things?
Are you going to ask for businesses? I mean, I don't think this is a good year to ask for donations from businesses because
no, it's not from businesses, from citizens. If somebody wants to pay for flowers, if somebody wants to pay for that kind of stuff.
It could be an
This is Trustee Lanfear. Yeah, that would be awesome. I did write a letter to all the trustees and to the treasurer earlier in the week, and I did suggest that we cut the wreaths out of the budget for next year. I don't know if this number reflects that or not. We still have bows and lights, and so those we would still have, but we wouldn't have the wreaths along the alley. That's correct. And the 2 large wreaths that are typically on the bridges. But I think we could get creative and come up with another alternative to decorate the bridges. So even though we didn't have the wreaths, so that was one proposal. The other is that if the trustees were to determine a specific figure for the flowers, we would just work within that number. Typically, we do 100.
Lily, the flowers that are going up this year are in the present year's budget. So if we're talking next flowers, year, we would actually be cutting flowers in 2021.
That's correct. In other words, and maybe come up with an alternative rather than not having them at all, is to reduce the number of baskets. Currently, we have 100. We could reduce that number and then be a little bit more stringent about how we put them up. That we would just only have them in one small area, Main Street, for instance, and adjust it that way. If the trustees were to determine that there was a certain number they would like to reach. So those were my suggestions.
This is Trustee Stetzer. I like that idea. I love flowers. They enhance our lives greatly, especially right now. I do think we need to reduce it. I like the idea of looking at that and seeing what we could do and maybe not eliminating them entirely. So I liked your idea.
I think, Renee, if we wanted to cut them by 25%, I think if we did 50%, we would really reduce the impact that they have. But I think we could probably handle a 25% reduction and it still would have some punch.
And how much did we determine, this is Trustee Stetzer again, did we determine if the wreaths have been, the cost of those have been taken out, like Lily suggested, or are those still in there right now?
They're still in there. What I did is just took down the number a little bit, and then when I met with Bob this afternoon, we put the number back up a little because we have porta potties that used to be out there from May till October 1st. Now they're out there from April until November. So there's a cost that was involved in there. I brought that number up a little bit. I
And
have
I
made no
don't
real.
I
Go
don't
ahead.
really think we can cut the porta potties because now nothing else is open, so people rely on them. And there's certainly, people have been walking on the canal since February, and they will continue to walk on the canal until the weather changes. So I don't think the porta potties is something that we can really cut.
Right, so it comes back to the flowers and the wreaths, and it would have to be revisited for how many you might want or what you would like to actually do regarding that, and we can work with a number in there.
When we determine what the flower number is, Mary, I would suggest a 25% reduction, which would reduce it, but would still leave enough there that it would still look nice in 2021.
Okay,
Okay,
maybe Lily and I could work on something that would be suitable.
great.
Okay,
And to eliminate the wreaths entirely.
Yes.
Yes. Which
eliminate
is
them?
2,500. Eliminate them. I think that's 2,500.
It
Okay.
might be it might be a little bit more. I'll look at the history, but I think it might be a little bit more. So you would like to bring that number down at least by the cost of the wreaths, and then maybe a little bit off the
Yes.
flower budget. Okay.
Yes.
So we're probably looking at this number being closer to 12K than 16.
Okay, great.
All right.
Yes.
Okay.
Moving on to page 7. We have stipends on here, 7550.4 events and security. We brought that down after Trustee Lampier and myself talked. We brought that number down to 2,000 to reflect the times. Lily, would you like to talk to that?
This is about events, and my looking at state of affairs going forward, it would appear that large gatherings are not going to be a part of our lifestyle going forward. And so my suggestion was that we remove that line item entirely, and because we shouldn't be encouraging large groups. That being said, it was also suggested that we keep some in there, some amount of 2,000, I think is what Mary put, so that if we wanted to contribute, if someone else was having an event, I can't impose my personal views on what I think of large gatherings going forward. We will just go by the guidelines of Monroe County Health, and currently those guidelines are that gatherings of 50 people or more will not be acceptable. So if we operate under those current guidelines, there will not be the regatta, which the village puts money towards.
That's been
Candlelight night,
canceled
which
anyway.
I'd go even farther
The
with it.
regatta's been canceled.
Yeah, I'd go farther with
okay,
this.
thank you. As of yesterday, it was not.
What's that?
But next year's regatta in 2021 might take place.
And that
So-
would be in this year's budget. Thank you.
Yep.
That's true.
And it would be candlelight night
So
with
that's-
the regatta, Arbor Day. I'm missing something. I can't remember now. Paddle and pour, maybe. So those are other
Yes,
events
paddle and
that
pour
are all
cost us
within,
money.
right, all these cost us money, so it's up to you. And that would be on the second half of this fiscal year that we're trying to figure out.
Yes.
I'd vote we
I
even
feel
go
comfortable if
farther.
everyone else does with the 2,000.
I'd like to go lower than the 2,000 if possible. I don't see why we're keeping I like that you cut from 7 down to 2, but I think we can go even farther than that. But
I'm totally open to what the other trustees
I
are.
would say we leave a
proposing.
little flexibility in there. It's hard to predict what's going to happen a year from now. And,
Yeah.
there's a lot of variables. So I would say 2,000 is not a lot of money. It's not going to make a lot of difference somewhere else, but it does give us a little flexibility if something comes up.
It does, Bob. And the other, this is trustee Lanfair again, and I'm wondering if the money that would not have been used on the budget this year, I think would have fallen under this year's budget for the regatta that was to happen Memorial Weekend or not? Was that?
There was
That
money
would have
in there
fallen.
for that, yes.
So I'm wondering if it could be transferred possibly to
No,
next year?
No,
It
it
cannot.
doesn't
No.
work that way.
It's
Because
a
it's
one-year
gone.
budget. It's a one-year budget.
Okay. But if we
You
don't use
start
it,
over June
that can go
1st, everything is cleared. Everything is cleared. It's all brand new.
Whatever the difference will be between revenues and expenses will go to our fund balance. So
thank you.
if,
Okay, that's what I meant.
okay.
Which
Okay,
we do not want to do.
I
Right.
see. Okay.
Okay, under planning on the bottom of that page, I did have, I don't even remember the number I had. I think I started out with 5. I brought that down for conferences for the planning and zoning board. That isn't much, and chances are maybe we won't even use that, but I think we should have at least a placeholder if something does come up that the planning board members would like to attend, that they could attend, or if,
Well, because there still is a state requirement for training for planning boards. And so that is a state unfunded mandate that we have to comply with.
so that was,
Bob, this is trustee,
go ahead.
trustee Lanfair. Do they charge as much for the online conferences? Could it be, could they still get their training that way? Or could we
4 hours of
provide?
Training a piece, it could be online. I don't know at this point what will be offered this year. There may or there may not be.
Okay.
So I think, again, I think we want to leave enough in there so we can cover it and we don't have to go to fund balance.
Okay. And when you get completed here, Mary, I would like to circle back to another line item. You tell
All
me
right.
when.
All right, I'm good. Go ahead.
I just really quick want to
Okay.
let the record know that trustee Stetzer is not with us at this time. I'm not sure where she went, so.
Trustee Stetzer sent me a text. She had a family obligation, so she is signing out of the meeting.
Okay, just for the record.
Okay.
Lily, go ahead,
I'm asking about budget line item 33201, parking.
hold on, let me get there. 3320.1 is personnel services
What
for
page is that?
15.6.
Right.
That is on page 4 of the budget appropriations.
That's our portion of
Correct.
the parking person, right?
Mm-hmm.
That is for
We
our
share
parking
with the
manager.
town.
Yes,
Yeah.
that is for a full year salary for him.
Yeah. And that generates revenue.
Right.
That
That's
offset.
correct. The offset is parking fees on the opposite side. Does that answer the
But
question?
this
trustee
year it
Lily?
was, well, the question actually is how much do we receive in revenue? It can't be just $65.
Oops, where are you with that number? Is that on the revenue side that you jumped to?
No, it's on another page. It shows how much revenue we received from parking.
No, that's correct. It's not just
Oh.
$65. Right now, there's a $2,400 that is coming back to us. That's since Mikey has been on with us. Most of the tickets that he writes do come back to us in revenue. The problem is that we have him started, I think it was at the end of October, and basically he hasn't been to work since March. So there hasn't been a whole lot of history for him, but he's been generating the income coming in. It's just that I don't have a history for him. There wasn't much in the prior with the prior parking monitor, but we had a better success rate with Mikey, and that's kind of where we're sitting at right now. So I still have money that will be, where's that 6,500? What page?
Oh, God, I can't remember what page that is that shows it.
It's on page 12. I found it.
Okay, thank you.
So I will have $2,400 that will be added to this. That's a reflective from, let's say October 1st to March 1st for monies that have come back to us. It's right now sitting in the courts for approval. I haven't got it back from the comptrollers, but by year end, we should have those monies come back in. Again, it's not going to be a good picture because from March, basically March 1st coming forward, there is no activity because of the pandemic. So I won't have a good history there.
So if you would be so kind as to remind me again, he is contractual, so he receives a certain amount of money from the Village of Pittsford each year, whether he is out
He is hourly.
doing tickets or not.
He is an
He's
hourly employee.
And it's,
So
and he
whatever
is paid
hours,
how much?
I think Dorothea, can you answer this? I think he's like at $13.50 an hour right now.
He is
For this-
currently at $13.50 an hour. Really, he came on about December 1st, started writing tickets, and pretty much through February. So if you look at December, January, and February, he was doing quite well. Yeah, so he is at 20 hours a week at $13.50 an hour is what we have Mikey at.
Okay. So the revenue doesn't really match what we're paying. And given the state of businesses going forward in the next year or so, it's got to be more than just parking tickets on Main Street. I think what we're talking about are snow time is, overnight parking on the streets, for instance. I mean, I'm trying to find a way to justify the expense with the
He
revenue
also, Lily, unlike our previous parking monitor, he does go out in the evening and ticket cars that are in the overnights for the guys. He's done that a couple times a week in cases, trying to keep up with keeping people off the street, and was quite successful this year. So he is willing.
Most tickets are issued it's not for time overrides, but it's primarily for safety infractions, people parked in fire lanes, blocking driveways, things like that.
And
Okay.
the other thing, if I may interject, his payroll to date is $5,700. And the money that he has collected that I've already sent out through the audit trail is at $2,400. So we're not too bad. I mean, it's not going to be a dollar for dollar thing, but he's doing pretty well.
He's doing pretty well, yeah.
He's doing pretty well for that. And it's unfortunate that we just don't have a full year of history. Like Dorothea said, we only have a few months worth. And I was mistaken. I was thinking he started in October, but it was December. So
no, you're right, Mary. We just, with training and getting him going, he really didn't start writing the tickets. He came in on October 31st, actually. So he had a month where he was learning what to do and talking with the town and everything. So
right, and
there was
Steve
some
came in
lag
to
time.
help him. Yes.
Yeah, there was some lag time.
Does that answer everybody's questions?
It does, thank you.
Okay. Where am I now? See, we were on page 7. At the bottom of page 7 for the consultants, I have $8,000, which includes the bridge design work that is being requested and any other thing that might come up throughout the year.
Can you give me a account line? I don't have page numbers on this one, but they're
on page 7, it's account number 8020.42. It's at the bottom.
okay.
It's the last item on that page.
Yeah.
Okay.
Got it. Thanks.
All right. And that's that is pretty much dependent on what projects the trustees may choose to go forward with in the year. All right. 8020.45 GIS collaborative, that is an agreement between the village and the town. That's a non-negotiable item. The next few numbers, let's see. Drainage contractual, go ahead.
Do we need the 2600 and 8030.1?
Unless you want to tick off the boards, that's their stipends. That
Yeah,
one,
I mean,
81
they spent, just hold on, they spent 1,600 in the last full fiscal year and they've spent nothing so far this year. I'm just
because
thinking, can we cut that in half?
no, the stipend is for all the members that, was
Oh,
part-
that's their pay. Okay, I thought that
That's
was a
their-
stipend for something else. Okay, that's
no,
fine,
no,
yeah.
that is their pay. And
Okay,
it's,
all right, yeah.
okay. So we got an 80/20, 30.1 for stipends, and to go back, it's also under 80/10.1. So that's the PZBA board and the HPB board.
Got it. I thought that was on page 1. Sorry, never mind, all good.
Okay, moving on. They also have a little bit of money in there for conferences, but it's not much to speak of. Under drainage, 8540.4. From previous budgets, I moved this line up for $12,000. This line might actually be a little underfunded depending, because there's several projects that are going on out there and, well, anyway, it might be a little bit underfunded, but I'll leave, that's the number that was given. Shade trees and tree maintenance. Those are also numbers provided, trees for replacement, tree maintenance for taking out the dead, trimming up pruning them up or whatever may take place. But I know there's several large trees that need to be removed. So that is what that's reflecting. State retirement number, that is per our estimate given. Social Security is based on the wages. 45,000 is for our insurance policy for workers' comp. The other two numbers are basically low. I dropped the health and dental number by 10,000. I have a little bit of a portion of it into the sewer fund, so that should be adequate enough to take care of both of them. The 80,901 that we're sitting at this year, that's through March, is not going to raise a whole lot. So I think we're pretty in line. Last year was 86,000. I think it's going to be pretty close. Debt service, bond principal, and
Mary, before you go too much farther, is it at all possible to cut the trees? 13K on maintenance is a big number.
that's also,
Can we get by with it? Is that the minimum?
In a meeting, can I call you back?
$4,000 on new purchases. I'm asking the trustees, $17,000 is a lot.
The thing I'd say to that is tree maintenance, you really can't cut it because the maintenance that we do prevents catastrophic damage in storms. And you're really.
I know. It's just, the last full year we spent 5K on it. And this year we've spent 11, so split the difference.
Zach, if I may say something, Zach had already told me he's got 4 huge trees that are about $3,000 a piece that need to come down. They're rotted and it's a safety issue at that point.
We had extra trees that we should have taken down a year ago, but we didn't because we didn't have enough money in the budget. The longer we leave them, the greater liability we're exposing ourselves to.
Fair enough. All right.
We also have a tree treatment in there in this number for
Broncola. That's for Broncola.
Yeah, it's for Broncola, yeah.
That
ash tree?
Yes, and that has to happen this year. It happens every 2 years. Otherwise, the trees die.
Are we good to move forward?
Yep.
Okay, so I left off at debt service for the bond. The bond 54,400 is being supported by our capital improvement plan, the bond itself. So that doesn't have really impact on our budget here other than I have to flow it through these funds here. Same thing with lease equipment is part of the taxpayer dollar, and these are payments that we have for another few years. Also non-negotiable. Under transfers to capital funds.
Excuse me, trustee Galusha here. Can I just raise a point with that leased equipment? This equipment is listed as leased, but at the end of the lease, it becomes ours for $1. So usually with a lease, like with an automobile, you usually turn the car in. This isn't the case here. At the end of the lease, the piece of equipment is ours for $1.
But you can't depreciate it.
I'm sorry?
No.
You can't depreciate it though.
Right.
Yeah.
Good to move on?
That's all I had to say.
Okay. The last of the expenses were transfers to capital funds. This was to fund basically seed money into reserves. The only real reserve that we have in existence at this point is 9950.9, which I did have money in. We took it all out. The other ones following that were ones that we should have on the books, and I was hoping that the board would support that, but at this time it did not come through. So we took out the 30,000 that I did have in these funds, and that's that one. Next page are the revenues.
Before we get to revenues, got one more question on expenses. What is the current thinking on the open office staff position?
My understanding at this point, without confirmation further, and Bob might want to comment on this.
I will.
We do have a full-time treasurer included and a half-time receptionist included to help us to get through the busy times. I'm not going to be here, so.
The comment I would add to what Mary said is, in addition to the treasurer, the part-time position that had been a full-time was reduced to part-time. That would cover Mary coming in for 20 hours a week to help train the new treasurer. And so she would we wouldn't actually fill that position. We would pay it in part-time to Mary, and then depending on where we are fiscally in the year, eventually we might hire a part-time person. But the real priority is to continue Mary so she can do training with a new treasurer.
Right, and as soon as she's good or he's good to go, I'm out of the picture.
Dorothea, do you want to comment on that at all?
Nope, that was my understanding. We would look at it after Mary got the treasurer up and running. It's going to be minimal at that best. We cut it down from a 40-hour position to 20. At some time in the future, we'll have to revisit it, but at this time, we're willing to do what we need to do in the office.
And I would be stepping in only to help with minimal number of hours to try to get the village through the critical portions over the next few months, if that would be acceptable with the board.
The other thing, a point I wanted to make to the rest of the board is, for most people, the summer is a quiet time. It's not the case here in the office. In June, we have taxes go out. In August, we have the sewer bills go out. And then the other thing that has to happen is the treasurer has to prepare an AUD for the comptroller's office by the end of the summer.
Actually, by August 1st.
So there's a heavy workload. It's actually a time, that's why the staff has trouble taking vacations during the summer, because it's actually the season with the highest workload.
I will concur with that.
I will too. It's crazy hour. All right, are we okay to move on to revenues? No further questions?
Yep, let's go to revenues, Mary.
Okay, real property taxes and Comida property, which is 10001 and 1081, is built in at 9.9%. Interest and penalties, as historically, are pretty much the same going from one year to the next. 1120 Monroe County sales tax. After talking to several different agencies, the general consensus is to bring that number down for the year by 20%, which is what I had put into the budget for this year. Gross receipts and franchise fees, along with clerk fees, zoning fees, those are probably pretty much going to stay the same. Interest on our general accounts, which I did have a higher figure in, I did talk with the bank. What we used to get is a 1.37% on our accounts is down to 0.25. They don't see any upturn in the economy where they would give us better interest rates. So I tried to be a little bit reflective of that in our numbers here. Building permits, as you see, it's historically about the same. I just kept that number. In talking to Steve, he thought that that was going to be a pretty fair number, even in respect to what's happening with the economy. Next page. Parking fees. I said $6,000 for possible revenue coming in. As I had said previously, I do not have a good indicator of what those revenues might be because we only have had Mikey here for just a few short months before the pandemic hit. But his success rate of bringing in the revenue has been much higher than what we've had in the past. Sale of equipment, 16.5. This is the trade-in for the Bobcat, 2013 Bobcat. Zach had initially said he felt that we should get between 15 and 18,000. I took a safe number of 16.5. We might come in lower, it might come in higher. I have no idea until it goes out to auction. So that's that one. AIM is supposedly the same as it is this year for 93.19. Mortgage tax, due to what's going on, people might not want to be selling their properties quickly. So we brought that number down to 18.5 after some discussion. I don't know what to say there regarding that whole thing.
Yeah, that's a big cut.
It is a big
Who's
cut.
speaking, please? I'm sorry. Who's speaking?
This is Trustee Keating. So
Okay.
what would you think about keeping with the 20% number? If we're using 20% on sales tax revenue, because that's much more than 20%. You went from 28.5 to 18.5.
We could do that.
Feel comfortable with that 20% and use that for a benchmark?
This is dependent on the house sales in the village.
Yeah.
Do you feel people will stay in the village because they're not going to be getting their money for what they want for their homes? Or do you?
Projections are sellers are not going to want to sell because the market won't give them the price that they want. And buyers, because of the uncertainty in the economy, are going to be less likely to put out money. So sales are definitely going to decline.
They are, but that's a 35% decrease, which is a really big number.
Well, we've seen fluctuations like that in the past in economic downturns that haven't been as severe as what is projected to happen in the next year.
Trustee Keating, what would you suggest would be a good number?
Well, the 20%, but
20% would put it at 22.5. I just ran that number quickly.
Thank you, Dorothea. That's the number I was looking for. So, does the board want to move that number from 18.5 to 22.5 or another number in between
How does
there?
everybody else feel?
I mean, it's a gamble any way you look at it.
It's a guess.
Yeah.
At this point, it's a guess. But I want to be conservative, again, because I just don't want to count on revenue that we're not going to receive.
yeah, and it's a good point. And Justin Vallistra just typed this in. Refinancing might occur. Interest rates are historically low. That would be pretty likely that existing villagers refinance their mortgages.
Yeah, but I would say interest rates have been low for a while, and unless there's a 2% drop, it doesn't warrant refinancing the mortgage.
Okay.
Also,
We
the other
can't cut
thing,
any expenses and we can't increase any revenue. It's
Well,
so
all I'm
easy
saying-
to we can justify these things all day long. 4,000, a 35% cut in mortgages is an enormous number. I'm proposing 20. If you guys don't want to do it, don't do it. It's fine.
all I'm going to say, can I just say one thing? refinancing figures don't come into play in this number. It is only sale of homes. So if I'm comfortable,
Oh,
either,
okay,
it's only the sale of homes. It's not refinancing.
So we get no tax on a refi?
Right.
That's correct. It's only if it's a sale of homes.
Oh.
So it's a gamble any way you look at it. If you want to move it up a little bit, I'm fine with that. The
Why don't
only,
we compromise and do 25%? How's that, Dan?
Sure.
Okay, done.
Dorothea, what would that new number be? I mean, the ideal thing would be that the money would come in just as we've had historically speaking. That would be great, but we don't know.
The magic number is $21,075.
21075?
Yes.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Hey, while we're still on the revenue side of things, I posed a question to you guys in email the other day about any kind of federal aid for municipalities there. And then just that day, we then got something saying there's a bill that would provide us with $70,000. Now, I don't think we'll get that, but it feels weird to take the cut and look, I get it from a conservative standpoint that you want to estimate your revenues low, but it feels strange to have nothing in there for any kind of federal
Talking to
bailout
Peter
when we're
Baines.
already.
Sorry, Dan. Let me let you finish first.
Now, I already posted an email. You guys, I don't know the answer. I'm just kind of
Dan,
curious.
because I read your email. I talked to Peter Baines at NICOM. He feels there's probably under a 40% chance that bill is going to succeed. So I don't think we can bank on it yet. I wish we could, but I don't think we can.
If it comes in, it's great. It could be also money used to offset anything else we might have or fund our fund balance. Are we okay to move on? I just have a couple other numbers and then I'm done.
Go ahead, Mary.
Okay, I have $68,000 in here for CHIPS. That CHIPS money is taking care of equipment and the road project. At this point, it is tentatively said that we've already lost $10,000 of this money because the program Pave New York has ended on March 31st. Our CHIPS representative did not know if whatever was left in our bank would be still left for us to use or if that has actually been deleted. And our new allocation, she did not have any idea of what that was. It's being kept under wraps. And like I said earlier in the meeting, as of 3:30 this afternoon, there was nothing on the website that stated what our new allocation would be. Typically, it's about $21,000, $22,000 in that range. So either way, whatever our expenses would be whatever our expenses are for equipment and road work, it would be offset by this pocket of money. So I feel safe in leaving this number as is for right now until we have further information.
Trustee Galusha, I think you're right, Mary. I think we ought to leave it at that number.
Thank you.
I agree.
Okay. I think the last item on here is the interfund transfer for $54,400. That is money coming in from the bond to take care of the bond payment.
Mhm.
That said, that is leaving us with a shortfall of $65,133 at this time, pending any changes that we just got through making.
Okay.
And I'll turn that all over to the trustees at this point.
So that would come next year, that 65,000, oh, I'm sorry, Trustee Galusha, that 65,133 would come out of the fund balance that we have at that time. Right now, we're looking at a fund balance of $47,000. Mary, what are you projecting our fund balance to be at year end?
I am hoping, I don't know for sure until I have a little bit more information. I'm hoping we're going to have about 140,000 total in fund balance at the end of this year, but that's not certain because I don't know what bills are sitting out there that are outstanding. That I can relatively predict what our payroll will be, but the abstracts in it are, I don't know. I know Zach hasn't done a whole lot of project work, but we may have something that will open up in mid-May. I don't know. So
Now
that's
that-
my best guess. I did run that information past Jen. I sent it out to her just prior to the meeting, so I have not heard back from her unless she's responded while we've been in the meeting. And
So
Jen, for those who don't know, is our accountant.
That 140,000, does that include the 47 we have now, or is that,
That's including the 47 we have right now.
so at year end 2020-21, if everything remains the same, that's a pretty big assumption, we would wind up with a fund balance of, of the 140,000 minus the 65.
That is correct. That would be correct.
Okay.
We should have this number addressed before we do a final budget because we should not submit a budget to the state showing that we are $65,000 short in expenses versus revenues.
Will you say that again, Mary?
So we should not submit a budget to the comptroller that's showing us right from go that we are $65,000 short expenses versus revenues. We should have zero budget here.
I thought
on
I
this
heard you
one
right
says-
the first time, Mary.
Yeah, appropriated fund balance number should be zero, not 65,000 dipping into our funds. Because technically speaking, if we're just going by the numbers that we do know, which is 47,000, let's say that is all that we end up with, we're already short 47,000 from 25. We're already short 20,000 going into the new year. We need to fix this number somehow. And I don't know what the answer is. The only thing I may suggest is maybe there'll be some movement in the numbers regarding the law category. Other than that, I think we've all gone through the numbers tonight and we're looking at them and they look pretty tight for what we have budgeted.
I'm sorry, this is Trustee Galusha. The numbers thus far show that we've only cut $6,000 from the budget from what we've done tonight.
Okay, I haven't been keeping track. I was
Yeah.
gonna adjust tomorrow. But,
Okay.
so even taking 6,000 out, we still have another 59,000 to come up with.
So Bob, can we talk about the agreement with Hodgson Russ?
Mhm.
We've got them at $80,000.
Right.
Can we talk about what they owe them or what we owe them and what the substance of your
Well, we know
conversation?
we owe them about
Actually, before we get to that, can we table that until after we see their bill for this year?
Well, that's what I'm leading to.
Yeah,
So-
okay.
So why don't we let Bob talk?
I believe we owe them about $140,000. Is that about right, Mary? That's what Dan Spitzer told me a couple weeks ago.
Yes,
So-
that is correct.
That's in the neighborhood of what we owe. What moves forward here in terms of services are only preparing one case to go to the appellate court. And that would be resubmitting the documentation for the HPB case after Judge Ark makes a decision.
So just so we're clear on that, we owe them 140. we've already spent 17 with them. So we're close to 160, and they're accumulating a lot. They sent 4 people to the meeting last week. They're accumulating new charges before the fiscal end. They're going to get close to 200K this year, and we budgeted 100 last year for it.
Well, I don't have those numbers on hand, so I can't verify that.
No, it's right there. It's in 1420.41.
All right,
On
that is
page
currently
2.
what we did.
But
Page
we
2
owe them
under law.
140, and we've already spent 17 with them. We're at 157, and it is April. They've got a couple more months to accrue things. Call it somewhere 160, 180 if you want. But we budgeted 100 for it, and I just have a hard time believing that they're going to come in at 80.
Well, I think they're going to give us an update for Thursday. I assume we'll have it by Thursday, and we'll have a more accurate number. What I know is the work that they have to do is to prepare the record and resubmit the documentation. The brief has already been written to the appellate court, and we'll press them for an accurate number of what that is.
Okay, and just know they told us the same thing last year. That's how we went from 162 in actuals down to 100 was, oh, it's not going to cost a lot. The paperwork's already done, blah, blah, blah. And it's going to come in at exactly what we spent.
Well, I think what has cost more money is every time that Mark IV feigns that they want to settle, and we spend time trying to figure out, get reasonable conditions that would actually allow a fair settlement conference, it costs money. The other thing that happened is we had
Bob,
anticipated.
stop there for a
Let me finish, please.
Okay.
The appellate court would make a decision, and they remanded it back to the court of Judge Ark. So, you know, if there's been one lesson in the last 8 years, is that it's virtually impossible to predict what will happen, because number one, we have a judge that doesn't necessarily follow the law. And there's been so many twists and turns and complexities and so many parties involved that indeed, yes, it is hard to predict.
Okay, and I'd want to see an accounting that every time that Mark IV said, hey, let's sit down at a table, it cost us a bunch of money from Hodgson Russ. They've done almost nothing on that front. That was almost none of their time. So you talk about hard to predict. 2 years ago, it was 160. This year, it's probably going to be about 160. I have a hard time believing that it's going to be 80 next year. If the last 2 years were 160.
On what basis do you think it's going to be 160 this year?
That the last 2 full years it was 160. Well, seems like a pretty good number to use.
You can't do that because it really depends on what's happening in court and the number of cases that are involved.
We were off by 60%.
Part of our strategy has been to keep filing cases and with the strategic intent of fiscally damaging the village.
Bob, what I'm arguing here is that we haven't budgeted near enough money to spend. The same thing I've been arguing for 3 years. And I was right the first 2 years. We haven't budgeted near enough money on 75 Monroe litigation. We were off by 60% this year. We were off by 60% the last year. If they want to come in at 80 and that's their number, I would say bump that by 60% and that's our number. If you want to be conservative.
Can I interject one little thing here? When I put in this dollar figure here, it was reflective not of the total bill, but of an agreement that the village would have come to for whatever the fees were. We would take it out like a lease payment for comparisons in speaking, and then maybe some towards regular litigation that is happening. We don't know what the right number is. I have asked them specifically myself today if they could please forward me what those bills are that have been incurred so that we can have a better handle on exactly what has been spent. And Bob had talked to him about what is the situation going forward and what we can expect, and to please update us with a new quote so we have a more realistic number that we can put in for budgeting purposes, because we are down to the wire. of trying to adopt a budget.
And I think we need that information because obviously, Dan, we want to make as accurate projection as possible. So I don't think there's any point to continuing this discussion.
No, I agree. I agree, but I do want us to be open to the fact that if they come back with another 140, like you said they probably would, or if it's in the ballpark, that we're going to be in the 160 range for the second year in a row.
I think that's much higher than they're expecting.
Well, that's what you just said. So,
Right, that's what I just said.
We'll go based on what they say. But I think we've way underestimated yet again what our legal fees are. Okay.
Dan, we're just going by estimates that they're providing. So yes, you might be right in that.
And their estimates have been wrong the last 2 years. We've got facts. The facts are that it was 160 both years. I really don't want to argue about this.
I am agreeing with you.
So they give us estimates. They're wildly wrong. We don't hold them accountable. We end up having to scramble and rob from Peter to pay Paul to pay for this. And we're not learning a lesson that we're not looking at actuals and saying, this is what it's been. We're just taking their word for it. And they've been terrible at it. They've been off by 60% the last 2 years. So,
that is why I requested the bills so that we have a better handle on it for this year. And, you know, it might be that we have to raise this number to 200 or whatever the right number is. Okay.
All right. Is there anything else we need to discuss today, Mary?
No, I would just, if I will make the changes in this budget that have been suggested and pay the bills that were authorized. Other than that, I have, you know, if anybody's got any other thoughts for any movement in any of the numbers.
I think the big thing is the legal bills, and I think we should just reconvene this discussion on Thursday.
So hold on, guys. A follow-up on the email I sent around today. We ended up addressing most of that. The only crazy idea was, can you do a 6-month budget, given that it's strange times, and then do a 6-month budget again? I suspect the answer to that is no, but I thought it was worth asking.
The answer to that is no.
Okay, that's what I thought. The next thing is Dave Ferris sent over some really good input, and we have covered some of that tonight, but I think I'm sorry. An anonymous villager sent over some very good input. Sorry. And I thought it might be good to go through those items. Or do you want to do that in email? How do you want to do this?
Either way, I don't care.
Let's do it now.
Okay.
Excuse me. Trustee Galusha, let's do it now.
Okay, I'm okay with that.
Are we also, excuse me, Trustee Lanfair, are we also going to open the floor? I'm just asking because there are a number of comments showing.
Trustee Galusha, can I ask a question of the treasurer? And that is, Mary, you said that right now we are in the red 59,000 based on this budget. And you said that we can't send this into the state, or we can, but we'll be criticized. What would happen if we were to send it in the way it is?
They would probably be at our doorstep the minute that this email hit them. You shouldn't send it's not fiscally responsible to send a budget over to the comptroller that says we're spending more money than revenue that we're bringing in.
Mary, I asked the obvious question because I wanted to hear you say it.
Okay.
So if we were to send that in, they would be at our doorstep. Maybe not right away, but they would be there.
I'd give them 5 minutes.
Okay.
It's just not fiscally responsible to send out a budget that has an imbalance. If it were the other way around, if we had more revenues than we had expenses, they wouldn't bother us at all because the difference would go then to build our fund balance. This way, we're looking at taking money out of a fund balance that is already critically low. And for that matter, if we just applied what we do have, that we know about, that's safe to expend, that would be 47,000 against a $65,000 loss right now, and that would still leave us with a loss and no fund balance. So that is a problem.
All right, so my next question, without the mayor being here, but I'll ask him when he comes back. My next question is, we've got a negative number of $59,000. Does anybody have an idea how we're going to make that up? Now, the mayor said, let's just defer the conversation until Thursday, but aren't we just putting it off? Why don't we talk about it now?
There's two ways to do it: raise taxes more, or furlough employees. If we cut to the bone in all of the expenses, then that's all you can do.
That would mean, Frank, excuse me, this is Trustee Lanfear, that the project on Grove would have to be deferred another year. That would be 30,000. Is that correct?
No,
It means using chip money. I understand.
That's tips, yeah.
right. That is fully funded by the state, so that would not, doesn't
I
impact the
see,
budget.
fully funded. I thought we were 30 and they were 30. I'm sorry, I misunderstood. I thought it was.
Guys, the one thing that I really want to know is at the level of salary that workers are making on our staff, are them and their families well covered by the unemployment benefits? Makes a big difference to the conversation. It becomes a less, if from what I know, and I think this is our homework to do, from what I know of the unemployment benefits, they're pretty good if you're making a certain amount of money. And it would be an easier decision if their families weren't hurt by what we might have to do.
Can I just chime in a little bit on that? If an employee
Mary,
goes out,
I do want to hear from the trustees on this, with all due respect.
okay.
Yeah. You guys are staff members. It's incredibly awkward to have conversations about this kind of thing with staff members.
I was just going to give you a general piece of information. As far as anything else, that's up to you. And that general piece of information is that the village of Pittsford, whenever you put out person out on to unemployment insurance,
You pay for it.
that information, that expense comes back onto the village. Additionally, this year, for a 39-week period through that is effective through July 31st, I believe it is. Each person that goes out on unemployment insurance gets an additional $600 per week that the village would have to absorb as part of our expense. Because we're the ones who are paying that unemployment insurance for that individual. Is that correct? Dorothea, can you throw in some light on that?
Yep, if I'm allowed to speak, that is absolutely correct. Unemployment insurance ends up costing us money. So if we can keep people working, you'd have to look at the loss for what we're going to pay compared to what we're going to save.
So, but it's not 100%. We're not paying 100% of their unemployment insurance.
Yeah, we do. We don't, it's not a full reflection of their salary, but we do pay, because it's different for us. We do pay the unemployment. We don't pay a minor dollar amount. No, it's a good amount.
So the savings yielded from, furloughing or cutting someone aren't what they would normally be, because we cover the full cost of the unemployment.
Correct.
Plus
We had an
additional
employee go out.
$600.
If they received $167 a week from unemployment, that's what unemployment bills us, plus interest. That is true. We've had that situation several times, and we've tried challenging it, and we actually lost when we did challenge it, even though that employee we thought had resigned. So no, we end up paying it.
Right, and additionally, because of what President Trump just said, there will be an additional $600 that would go out to that employee every week for a period of 39 weeks.
So you guys are telling me that 100% of whatever they receive in unemployment is paid for by the village?
That's correct.
That is correct.
Yes, and what we're telling you is that we are better to keep the people working rather than paying that amount of money for nothing.
I mean, I'm not saying if the person was making 500 a week. We're not going to be paying 500 a week. We might be paying 250. It's whatever our unemployment determines.
Yeah, so
There's
that's
the savings, but it's not, we still have to look at, and the 600, I'm not
and
sure if
guys,
that's
okay,
covered.
and pause. So that's the homework to do, is to figure that out. I don't want to lay anybody off. I don't want to furlough anybody. But if you're talking about how to cut $50,000, you're going to have those kinds of conversations, or you're going to have to raise taxes another $50,000.
Well, we would have to raise taxes, excuse me for interrupting, to 4.72 per thousand. The currently on the tentative budget that was accepted is 4.395. We would have to raise it to 4.72 in order
we were at
to
4.0,
make up the
right?
shortfall. We were at
Sorry.
4.0 and we went to 4.395. If we went to 4.72, I believe that would make up for the revenue shortfall.
So that would be an 18% raise in taxes.
Well, yes, I prefer to look at the new rate, which is per thousand, which would then make us at about $205 per household per year.
Yeah, it's an 18% raise in tax.
That's what it would be then. That's what we would need in order to.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay, what else do we want to cover?
Yes, Trustee Galusha, can I go back to the Hudson Russ legal bills? Right now, when can we expect the invoice from them, Mary?
I talked to them today and I asked them if they could please get it to us within the next few days. And they said they would work on doing that because I told them we need the information for budgeting purposes.
All right, so when that invoice comes within the next few days, it'll be in the range of approximately how much, Mary?
I believe what they're suggested was 140,000 in
Okay.
total. In total.
In total, you mean what they owe us now?
What we owe them now.
Yeah, well, yeah, I'm sorry. So we'll get the invoice and that will be the total amount we'll owe them would be 140,000.
That is what I'm hoping to confirm.
All
But
right,
hold
so-
on, Frank.
No,
Hold on,
wait,
Frank. We've already
wait
spent.
a minute, Dan, don't interrupt me, please.
Okay.
So Mary, when that invoice comes in, we're gonna have to show that. And that means that our fund balance for this year is gonna be negative, is that correct?
If we choose to pay that invoice this fiscal year, it would, yes, that is what it would do. This is the invoice that I had suggested that we would go into an agreement with Hudson Ross over, where let's just say, for example's sake, you decide to pay 20,000 of it this year and then put the rest of it out for a 3-year period or whatever you come up with between them. And that difference, let's say that payment will be 40,000 a year. So 40,000 would go into our expense line for that purpose.
Excuse me, Mary, but that's what we talked about this afternoon, but I want to take one thing at a time. So when that invoice comes in, we're going to have to show that. And if we show it, year end, that'll be a current liability. We will have a negative fund balance. Is that correct?
That is correct. If we
Okay.
either put it into expenses or if we put it into an accounts payable, either way, it would show as a liability.
And either way, we'll end the
And we'd
year
end up with a negative fund balance.
with a negative fund balance. Okay.
Right.
So we're faced with either that or sending a budget in with a negative, which brings the controller to our door. So where are we going? Let me suggest, and let me say something first. I was against, at first, borrowing on the bond. I don't like borrowing. I don't like borrowing at all. but sometimes you got to do what you got to do. So let me just suggest, right now we have Hudson Russ in our budget for $80,000. Let's drop that to, let's see, we want to drop that 60,000. That will balance our budget. And we negotiate with them within the next couple days an arrangement where we would work out an agreement like we talked about, kind of like a lease agreement. So their first payment would be what we would be due, and the other would be a long-term liability. But that would give us the balanced budget that would put us in a sound position for the budget and for this year. And then going forward, we could negotiate terms that we could live with that aren't necessarily a long-term obligation, but may very well wind up. That's going to solve the problem now. And I hate to recommend this. I hate doing this. As you know, one of the thoughts that I had previously was dropping these bills and trying to talk about some long-term arrangements. There was a lot of flack about that, so I dropped that idea. But at this point, this may be the only option that we have. I just throw that out there right now.
It's an interesting idea. Thank you, Frank. It is truly kicking the can down the road, which is not great. And I know that you don't love this idea yourself. The challenge is I just don't, first of all, we're talking about adding another 140,000. That's year to date. There's still accruing expenses. It's going to be higher than that. There's things going on right now and we still have a couple months left in the fiscal year that are in the future. It's going to be higher than 140. So we have to sort of plan for that. But we'll get to that once we look at their bill, and at least they could give us an accurate estimate from their bill to the end of our fiscal year. That should be pretty darn accurate. I don't think it's the only thing we can do. I think we do have to examine the math around layoffs and furloughs.
Trustee Galusha, I don't think those options are feasible right off the bat. And I don't think they would net us anything that's going to solve the problem.
I don't know
Let's
how
look
we
at the
would
numbers
operate with
before we make that decision.
I don't know how we would operate. Because there's only essential staff really that's left at the DPW and in the office. I think we should cap it here unless Dan, are there any other specific suggestions you wanted to go over before we end the meeting?
Do we want to go over Frank, go over the email that was sent in?
Yes, to end your conversation, Trustee Galusha, do we have board agreement that perhaps the mayor and I could contact Hudson Russ to explore this idea and we could report back to the board on Thursday?
Sure.
This is Trustee Lampier. I guess every option should be explored. I mean, we should. I would like to know, Mayor Corby, if we are going to open the floor for any of the comments that have been coming in while we've been speaking.
I read all the comments. I think most of them have been answered in our conversation.
Oh, okay. I didn't know we could do that. I'm still a novice over here.
Yeah, no, I think I looked at them. I think we've really resolved all of them. I think we'll have a more productive discussion if we do it on Thursday when we have some feedback on the attorneys, because that is the big elephant in the room.
Oh, I see it now. This is amazing. Okay, I have to see it.
Okay.
I didn't know if anyone wanted to
Somebody
speak.
have the comments that were emailed earlier so we can go through those?
Yeah, I have that right here. So the
Is
first
it
point,
the one from Dave Ferris, is that the one you're referring to?
yeah, I've got it right here, Bob. And he asked for anonymity. The
Oh,
first one we've already addressed, making sure that we had the cut in expected tax revenues reflected in our budget. I think we already addressed that. We already got it in there. Legal fees. He didn't have the information that our legal fees are not down on 75 Monroe. In fact, they're flat. He had an interesting idea. So I'm going to read this verbatim. And he said he defers to the treasurer's opinion. We should look at all reserve fund contributions not mandated and move them to the contingency fund line. If later in the year we are able and confident we can use that portion of the money for that capital item, for instance, I don't know how it can be criticized by the comptroller or a citizen to plan with the greatest flexibility in this unique time. It may appear as a large contingency fund, and yes, it is, but that is the purpose of a contingency fund. It was kind of an interesting idea on how to get flexible in our spending.
I don't think we have anything in the contingencies. Other than a general contingency, we're not putting anything into any of the reserve funds. We've already taken that out.
Yeah, I don't know what reserve funds he's actually talking about, because we pulled the
We're not making
reserve.
any contributions, right?
Yeah,
We've addressed the trees and holiday decorations.
Yep.
He acknowledges that we can't do salary freezes on union contracts and those kinds of things. We're definitely not pretending that the sales tax decline won't occur. Okay, and then it's talk of sales of tax increases. Okay, I think we covered most everything in there, and if we didn't,
I'm sorry.
there's a comment that I think bears reading from Justin Lightgeb.
Yep.
I have a question related to staff furloughs. Assuming we did the analysis and it actually turned out to save significant money, how would we construct a budget with those figures in mind, given that we don't know how long the furlough would last? It seems to me like it might make sense to ignore that possibility of staff furloughs for the purpose of constructing the budget. And if we do decide to go down that path, use any savings that might come in later to add to our reserves.
Makes sense.
It's one way to do it.
Yep. Okay, anything else?
Did we want to open it up to comments that aren't chat? That people wanted to, I mean, there's a lot of people on the phone. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 people.
Does anyone on the phone wish to comment? I don't hear anyone. No?
Okay, they're unmuted. Is there any caller that wants to speak? Caller 1. Okay, caller 2, did you want to speak? Nope. Caller 2's gone. I only have one caller left and they didn't want to comment. I didn't get any.
All right, with that, then I would make a motion to
Oh,
adjourn.
Justin Valistra said he'd like to talk.
Oh, okay, all right.
Let me find him.
Can you unmute Justin Valistra?
I'm finding him.
Yep. I just did. Justin Valistra.
Thank you. I wanted to follow up on some of our discussions from last time. Did Did reduction in meetings that we had discussed about, I don't know if that's been reflected in the budget or not.
Mary Morowski, I have not had any instruction to adjust any of Mindy's fees.
Mindy gets a month amount regardless if you meet or not, Justin.
Yeah, so we talked about last time was cutting our meetings in half and reflecting that in an updated contract. So far, I have heard no objections to that, but that
Well,
would be.
we need buy-in from Mindy. I can call Mindy tomorrow and see if she's agreeable to that. I would be willing to do that.
I don't know what her adjusted fee would be. I did advise her that two things that were under discussion is one, cutting our meetings and because we're not getting any applications, and maybe we could get some savings from that. I don't know any absolute dollar amounts for that. And the other thing is deferring payments over for litigation over multiple budget cycles. It sounded like Mindy was amenable to that, but again, that's all about the details. And so those are two possible options to save some funds. There's a minor discussion about our training costs, and my guess is that will be pretty minimal this year. We need to get training, but I think we can go through the NICOM stuff for like $100 a year or whatever the fee is for their stuff. So I'm not expecting a lot for training. Other than that, I don't think there's much I can add for what's under our control to the discussion.
Okay, thank you, Justin. Anything else? Anyone else before we close the meeting? All right, I'll make a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
Trustee Lampier, second.
Okay. Trustee Keating,
Keating, aye.
Trustee Galusha,
Trustee Galusha, aye.
Trustee Lampier,
Trustee Lampier, aye.
Mayor Corby.
Mayor Corby, aye.
Meeting's adjourned.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you.
6:30 tomorrow, Thursday, 6:30 on Thursday, yeah?
Correct.
6 o'clock?
6:30. I'll resend out the chat notification tomorrow and Thursday as well.
And
Wait a
Dorothy,
minute,
don't
it's-
forget to
Thank
stop
you.
the recording.
Got it.
It's supposed to be 6:30 or 6 o'clock?
I'm sorry, 6 o'clock. I'm losing my brain. 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock.